Welcome to Daily English Stories. Every story hides a world. Some inspire, some haunt, some stay forever. Chapter 1. The First Glance. The school hallway was alive with the usual rhythm. Shuffling feet, half-whispered greetings, the distant echo of a ringing bell. But for Zion, the world moved a little slower that day. He had always been the quiet kind, the one who listened more than he spoke, who walked with books clutched tightly to his chest and thoughts that rarely made it to the surface. He didn't believe in things like love at first sight. That belonged in stories, in movies, not in the life of someone like him. But then, he saw her. She wasn't doing anything extraordinary. Just standing near the notice board, frowning softly as she read a flyer, her fingers tucked into the sleeves of her sweater like she was trying to keep the world at bay. Her hair fell gently across her face, and when she pushed it back, her eyes lifted. And for a fraction of a second, they met his. Not for long, but long enough. Something shifted. Zion turned away quickly, unsure of what he had just felt. It wasn't a thunderclap or some dramatic stirring of the heart. It was quieter than that, like a whisper in a library, like the soft rustles of turning pages. But it stayed with him, all through literature class, through lunch, through the final bell. That glance replayed in his mind over and over again. The next day, he noticed her again, sitting 2 rows ahead in the classroom, doodling in the margins of her notebook. She laughed at something the teacher said, not a loud laugh, just a breathy chuckle. And Zion found himself smiling too, even though he hadn't really caught the joke. He didn't even know her name. But suddenly, he wanted to. He watched the way she tied and untied her ponytail, how she always offered gum to the girl sitting next to her, how she would hum softly when solving a math problem. He wasn't being creepy. At least, he hoped not. It was just curiosity, a quiet fascination. She was like a song you didn't know you loved until it played on repeat in your mind. Days passed. She began to appear everywhere, in the cafeteria line, by the library steps, at the bus stop across the street. Zion wasn't sure if she was always there before, and he just hadn't noticed, or if the universe had suddenly decided to place her in his orbit. Whatever it was working. But still, they hadn't spoken. Not a single word, only glances. Accidental, fleeting glances that sparked something deep and confusing. One afternoon, as she stood waiting for the rain to stop under the school's entrance arch, Zion walked past her. Their eyes met again, this time for a little longer. She smiled, just slightly. A soft, real smile. He didn't smile back right away. His breath caught, and when he finally did, she was already looking away. That night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling. His heart wasn't racing, but it was full of questions, of wonder, of a quiet hope he didn't quite understand. He didn't know where this was going. He didn't even know her name. But something had already begun. Enter Chapter 2. Unspoken moments. They say some of the strongest feelings in life are the ones left unspoken. And that's exactly what those days felt like. After that first glance, after something shifted quietly in a single heartbeat, everything seemed to change without either of them saying a word. Their paths began to cross more often, though neither tried too hard to make it happen. It was as if life had gently aligned their schedules, like a shy friend secretly nudging them closer. In the school library, they'd often find themselves just a few seats apart, both silently absorbed in books, yet fully aware of each other's presence. The turning of pages became a rhythm in the silence, and though no words were exchanged, there was a strange kind of comfort in just being near. One afternoon, during a group assignment, fate placed them side by side. At first, it was awkward. Nervous glances, shaky hands, too many quiet pauses. But then, slowly, the ice began to melt. He handed her a pen when hers ran out of ink. She laughed softly at his joke, even though it wasn't particularly funny. They didn't say much, but in that moment, 1,000 feelings passed between two uncertain smiles. The world around them continued. Friends chattered, teachers lectured, bells rang, but all of it faded when they were near each other. In hallways, they'd exchange fleeting looks, a glance held too long, a shared smile that meant everything and nothing at once. And then came the little things, the kind that don't mean much to anyone else, but for them were everything. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. The way his eyes lit up when he talked about something he loved. They noticed. They remembered. They carried these pieces of each other in silence. There were moments when their hands brushed accidentally, and the electricity of that touch lingered far longer than it should have. Moments when they'd both reach for the same book or speak at the same time, and then laugh, quietly, awkwardly, beautifully. Their friends began to tease them, whispered comments, knowing looks, little nudges, but they just smiled and shrugged, pretending nothing was happening. Even though, inside, everything was happening. They never confessed. Not yet. Because sometimes, love begins in the spaces between words, in the glances, in the silences, in the quiet understanding of two souls slowly discovering each other. And in those unspoken moments, they found something delicate and real. Something worth waiting for. Because some feelings don't need to be rushed. They just need to be felt. Deeply. Quietly. Truly. Chapter 3. The Confession. It happened on an ordinary day. The kind of day no one expects anything from, just gray skies and the hum of everyday life. And yet, for them, it would become unforgettable. They hadn't planned it. There were no rehearsed lines, no grand gestures. Just two people who had spent days, weeks, maybe even months, walking the quiet line between silence and something more. It was after school. The corridors had emptied out, echoing with only a few scattered footsteps and the distant sound of lockers slamming shut. He, let's call him Ayan, stood by the courtyard bench where they often sat after class. His fingers nervously traced the edge of a notebook, flipping it open, then closed again, over and over. She, let's name her Hira, approached, her steps hesitant but steady. She knew this was different. She could feel it in the way the air tensed, how his shoulders didn't quite relax even when he smiled. "Hey," she said softly, sitting beside him. "Hey," he replied, voice dry and unsure. There was a long pause. They both looked ahead, watching the fading light paint long shadows across the courtyard tiles. The silence was full but not empty. It carried weight, emotion, something fragile that neither wanted to drop. He started, then stopped. She turned to him, eyes curious but kind. He took a breath, like he was preparing to dive into deep water. "I don't know how to say this right. Maybe it's not the right time, or maybe I'll mess it up completely. But if I don't say it now, I'll keep wondering forever." She didn't interrupt. Her heart beat a little faster, but she didn't speak. "I think I like you," he said. the words spilling out in a soft, uncertain whisper. Not just as a friend. I've liked you for a while now. I just didn't know how to say it. There was a heartbeat of silence. Maybe two. He looked down, afraid to see what her eyes might hold. Then, gently, her hand touched his. I was hoping you'd say that, she replied. Her voice wasn't trembling like his. It was calm, real. There were no fireworks, no dramatic background music. Just two young hearts, finally speaking a truth they had held in for too long. They sat there for a while longer, hands barely touching, smiling like the world had paused just for them. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were no promises, no declarations of forever. But it was enough. It was a beginning. And in the quiet, in that small, stolen moment, it was beautiful. Chapter 4. A Memory Forever. The years moved quietly, like soft waves brushing the shore, and with them came the inevitable changes of life. School ended, friends scattered, dreams led people down different paths, and somewhere along that winding road, the days of glances and gentle smiles faded into memory. They didn't forget each other, but they no longer walked side by side. It wasn't a dramatic ending. No shouts, no final goodbyes. Just a gradual drifting, like two leaves carried in different directions by the same breeze. Their last conversation wasn't planned, but it stayed in the heart like a song. A shared laugh, a look that held gratitude, and a quiet understanding that what they had was rare. Time passed. There were new faces, new crushes, new lessons. But nothing ever felt quite like that. Not because it was better or worse, just because it was the first time someone's smile could undo a day's sadness. The first time a heartbeat felt louder in someone's presence. The first time hope felt like a living thing. Sometimes they'd look at an old photo and remember. Sometimes, walking past a place they once stood, a smile would escape before they even realized why. It wasn't about wishing for the past to return. It was about carrying it, gently, like a folded note tucked deep in a pocket. That love, the first one, had shaped them. It had taught them patience, vulnerability, joy, and even heartache. It had shown them that love doesn't always have to last to be meaningful. Sometimes, its magic lives on in who we become after it. One day, standing at a coffee shop, they heard a laugh that sounded familiar. Their hearts skipped. They turned, but it wasn't them. Still, they smiled, because just for a moment, that feeling returned, that quiet warmth, that small ache, that beautiful memory. And as they walked away, into the life they had now built, they carried it with them. Not as a weight, but as a light. A gentle reminder that once they had loved. Deeply, innocently, truly, and that would always be theirs.